Welcome back. This is E15, the program that we are doing countdown 10 days to the presidential election in Nigeria. And on this program, we carry out in-depth and critical analysis about issues of national importance, especially as regard to the April 28th and May 11th general elections. And I have Tokwe Mark Odige. She's making a second shirt.
I'm happy to be here this morning. This evening, actually. Very happy to be here.
All right. Dipo Olayoko, the general, is also here with me.
Yes, Ayo. Good evening. It's good to be here.
And Babajide Otitoju.
Good evening, viewers.
Straight up, election may not hold in liberated towns and villages. Jide, let me start from you, Chief of Army Staff. We saw that report yesterday, and I don't know, maybe the producer can just, let's have that report so that we hear General Minima the way he was saying what he said. But Jide?
Yes, the reality is, even if you've been listening to the Borno State Governor and some of his aides, they actually have been saying that the present state of those communities mean that elections cannot take place in those communities at this time. One, Boko Haram adopt a kind of scorched earth policy, you know, in those occupied territories. As they were retreating, they were setting people's homes ablaze. So where do the people live? They've lost all their means of livelihood, they've lost their homes. Some rebuilding will have to take place if you really want people to return to those communities. And it's not a question of, oh, just return for one day so that we can have elections. They have to familiarize themselves with the environment. They need to have been there. They need to have been there for some time before you can say, okay, let's have these elections in these places. So the reality is, the way those communities are now, currently, there's no way elections can take place in those communities. Naturally, what the president wanted was for people to return to those communities, and then we can have elections in those communities. But he has made several appeals to the emirs of some of these communities, and the emirs themselves are saying, look, we've been telling our people, but they are reluctant to return. Look at a town like Damboa. Damboa had been reclaimed since July last year. You know, it was captured by Boko Haram, but in a swift counterattack, the Nigerian army reclaimed it. But people have refused to go back to Damboa because people who saw Boko Haram slaughter members of their families, slaughter their friends. What they are saying is, look, except the soldiers will be prepared to live permanently with us. You saw what happened in Chibok, that even after kidnapping at least 117 guests, they still went back there to kill people in the church and other places. So people are scared, that's one. And then the current state of affairs in those communities mean that elections would just not be able to take place in those places. But I think INEC has devised a way, you know, to let residents of those occupied territories vote in the various IDPs. There are more than 1 million internally displaced persons being sheltered in various camps across Borno State, for example. So I think they will find a way to let those people vote in in those camps.
Dipo?
Yes, it is just very, very unfortunate that we found ourselves in this cul-de-sac. Just let me take off from where Bajde landed, because I watched the INEC DG's town hall meeting. It was beamed live on one of the channels, and this question came up towards the end of the program. I think one journalist asked the question that what is going to happen to the IDPs in view of the fact that INEC claims that the card readers will be configured in such a way that it will go in tandem with the locality where those guys registered. And within myself, I tried to replay what the INEC chairman said. it's like the guy couldn't answer the question. Because according to him, he said there are some IDPs that have been moved to the headquarters, or let me say the state capital. Some IDPs were moved to Abuja, while some were even moved outside Nigeria, those who are living outside Nigeria, who are like refugees. So it's going to be a very difficult and tough nut to crack. And I think INEC should be, because I remember that the impression they gave us when they asked for the extension was that they said they wanted to flush these guys out of this place so that they would make the places conducive. Perhaps that was why INEC was not preparing for holding election at this locality. And I remember that during the last media chat of the president, he also made it very clear that the essence of this operation is to make sure that elections hold in these areas. Now with the current reality, because you can't run away from that fact. The structures that they will need for the people to operate in these localities have been destroyed. And beyond that, there's the problem of psychological problem, the trauma. Because these people will still continue to remember what they experienced, that gruesome murder of their fellow townspeople. It will still be there. So I think INEC should be thinking of what they're going to do to make sure that these people, because if we postpone the election because we wanted Nigerians to be involved by virtue of distribution of PVC and by virtue of making sure that those IDPs are allowed to vote, we cannot have any excuse again on March 28th to tell us that, oh, we cannot hold the election. And whatever we are doing, there's a need for us to be conscious of the fact that whatever elections we are holding, all elections must end by April 29. If we are not going to go into any constitutional crisis. 30 days is what the constitution says before the handover day, which means 29. And again, when you are planning election, especially in this kind of election that is very difficult to call, they must also be thinking of runoff election. So I think this is what the which must hold before April 29. So I think whatever we are doing, whether Minima, the Chief of Army Staff, or the government or INEC, elections must be concluded by April 29. I think that's what we should be working towards now.
Talk about this situation. Is it possible? It's almost not possible to hold the election without those three states.
I am wondering, taking a leap from what he just said, I don't think INEC should be thinking about how to address that issue. I think it's something that should have been put as a part of the structural plan before. The idea was that the postponement was so as to secure the lives and property of people. The service chief said we cannot secure the lives of INEC officials going to conduct the election. Neither can we secure the lives of the people that want to conduct the election. That is why we seek for a 6 weeks postponement of the election. And now we have 10 days to the election, and they've virtually been winning the war. We can applaud the military on this. However, they still can't conduct election, and we are now asking INEC to think of what they will do concerning the IDPs. They shouldn't be thinking of what they should do concerning them. There should have been a plan, because the idea of a leader is to foresee any issue that can come up. This is not something strange. They should have foreseen this could come up. So INEC should already have a plan. What they should say is that, oh, we foresee that the election will not take place, and these are the plans we intend to carry out when it gets too close to the election, and we still can't solve that problem. According to Mr. Jide's analysis of the psychological trauma of what those people are going through, nobody would want to go back to their houses. Which house would they go back to? So obviously, there's no way elections will hold there. But we can't use that to postpone the election further. It might constitute constitutionally wrong to carry it out that way. So they should have thought about all this. I would blame Jega for any further complications right now.
Okay, I think let's take this report from Abuja correspondent Tai Amodu.
Independent National Electoral Commission Atahiru Jega was also a participant at the security meeting, expected to discuss gains made in operations by the Nigerian armed forces in the past few weeks. The INEC chairman, however, left not too long afterwards, refusing to divulge any details of the meeting to State House correspondents on his way out.
It's coming on very well.
How far did your presentation to the council go? How was it?
I believe it went very well.
After a long drawn-out meeting, Army Chief Kenneth Minima stepped forward to answer the many inquiries posed by waiting correspondents, disclosing the rate of successes achieved by the armed forces.
Yobe and Adamawa states have been liberated completely, and we'll look forward to restatement of structures of government and of governance. And I'm also sure you know that in Borno State, out of the 27 local governments, we have 3 local governments remaining: Abadam, Kalabalge, and Goza. And we're optimistic that with time, we'll liberate those local governments.
He was, however, reluctant to put a time frame as to when the insurgents would be completely routed from Nigerian territory, pointing out also that it was left to the electoral body to assess and decide if elections could go ahead on March 28th.
I think INEC is still there. INEC now has to reassess and evaluate because the areas have been liberated, but I can also tell you that not all structures of governance have been reinstated, and they will need to be reinstated so that citizens can go back to their areas, and it is then I think they can
How soon can they
execute their rights as voters. How soon, I don't know. I am a soldier.
Not before March 28th?
General Minima also dismissed claims that there were South African mercenaries on Nigerian soil, explaining that the expatriates being described as such were instructors and technicians.
There are no mercenaries in Nigeria, no mercenaries employed by anyone.
What we have about the Chibok girls yet?
What we have advisors and instructors, and they are all over the world. Wherever you get new equipment, equipments come with contracts, and the contracts include maintenance. And these the technicians that come with them are those that you have.
After this security meeting, Nigerians are still left in the dark as to whether there will still be another postponement of the elections, with relevant authorities keeping mum. From all indications, the task of bailing the cat is still left to the Independent National Electoral Commission. Tayamodu, TVC News, Abuja.
Welcome back. Jide, what should now, it's as if the Chief of Army Staff has pushed everything to the doorstep of the Independent National Electoral Commission to decide what's going to happen.
Yes, it's INEC's call to decide how it wants to hold the elections in those places. Even if the president wanted people to return to their homes, and those people have no homes to return to. Even Mubi, I saw the president when he visited the emir of Mubi. Mubi has been liberated now for a long time. But the emir is still calling people to return to Mubi. And Mubi is a very big town. The kind of destruction that they carried out in Mubi, you can't even compare to other places. You know, it has tertiary institutions, there are places for people to stay. But people are reluctant. They would rather stay on the mountain tops than come home, you know, where they believe they could be slaughtered. So these are problems, you know, that the people are grappling with. And look, what they are saying is they can't endanger their lives because of an election. Because this electoral season will go and life will continue. So that is the thing. There is no election that is worth anybody's blood. So the people are reluctant to return. Look, if INEC says tomorrow that we are going to do election in the occupied territories, I mean the liberated territories, the people will still not return. But INEC has found a way to do elections in the camps for the internally displaced persons. And you know that Senator Ali Ndume raised the motion, you know, to, even though naturally it's not, in the electoral act there was no provision for this. The electoral act didn't envisage a situation whereby some communities will be sacked by Boko Haram and then people will be moved to Maiduguri or moved to Abuja and other places, you know, and then elections to pick their representatives, you know, will be held in those places. So the electoral act didn't envisage that situation, but it has happened, and INEC knows that that those people must vote. The Constitution of Nigeria says that every Nigerian of voting age must nobody should stand in the way of that person exercising his right to vote. So for that reason, INEC has come up with an ingenious plan to ensure that these people vote in those IDPs. Because, of course, from their cards, they will know what part of the state they come from. So they will be able to find a way to arrange them and get them to vote local government by local government. I'm sure they are going to do that. If it doesn't work, then too bad. But they've been talking about this for some time, and even the Senate summoned the INEC chair, telling him that it is important that people in the camps for the internally displaced persons vote, because their number is huge. You can imagine in Maiduguri alone, there are more than 1 million of them. All the big schools in Maiduguri have been converted to camps. Schools have been shut. So there are so many camps where these people have been taken care of. Government has been feeding them for this long. So INEC has its plan to conduct elections in those places. As to the issue of whether there will be another postponement, for me, I do not see this happening. Yes, we have 3 local governments yet to be liberated from these guys. But if we see the pace with which our soldiers have gone, they've out of originally 14 local governments, so in fact 13 before, then suddenly the terrorists captured the garrison town of Monguno, and just before the February 14 original date. So we now had 14 local governments across 3 states, 2 in Adamawa, 2 in Yobe, the rest of them Borno. Now they are down to just 3, all the 3 in Borno State. I believe that apart from Goza, which will really test the nerves and the skills of our soldiers, the 2 other local governments, Abadam and Calabalge, or what is it called? I believe our soldiers can liberate those 2 within a matter of days. Okay. So and even if we are left with those 3 local governments, I don't think this time around that anybody will want to postpone the election because of 3 local governments.
Dipo, before I came into the studio, I met with some group of people, and somebody walked up to me and they asked me, would there be election in 10 days' time? As in, apart from what we have in Northeastern, are you sure there's going to be election in the next 10 days?
Yes, unless we want to be stretching patriotism to the higher level of optimism. I was on a live television program today, and such a question came. And based on, as a journalist, when you interact with people, you ask people questions, anywhere you get to ask questions. Sure Nigerians will be asking you, it has got to that level. And let us extend it or stretch it to exactly what has happened immediately after this victory we are talking about over Boko Haram. You see, in war, there's something they call post-war victory, which Nigeria failed to have won now. I will still go back to the reason why they postponed the election. They said to flush out Boko Haram so that we can hold elections in these states. This aspect was reinforced by the president in the last media chat. Now that we have won the war, the battle, we still cannot hold elections. It means some people are not thinking ahead. You cannot blame INEC, because the impression they gave INEC when they asked for extension was to make these areas conducive for elections. If INEC is now going to think about IDPs where they're going to vote or where they're going to hold the election, it must now be between now or yesterday when the chief of army staff came out to say elections cannot still hold. After that victory, what effort did we make as a country to work on the psyche of these people that were experiencing that trauma, to make them forget? That's where psychology should have come in, to make them forget what they witnessed when Boko Haram came. One, then to assure them that the Nigerian state, the Nigerian government, is now in charge of the 774 local governments in Nigeria, that never again will Boko Haram sneak in during the night, because the people still have the fear. So, beyond the election, life must go on in these communities. Let us forget about March 20th and April 11th. Are you saying these guys will not go back? So, the issue is, it will be very, very difficult by the way this, that at times, the way you communicate may eventually send wrong signal. I think the way the chief of army staff said it yesterday has created a new doubt in the mass of Nigeria. Because when you say election cannot hold in these territories, and you told us when you were asking for extension that is just to make sure election hold. And based on the pessimism that Nigerians had up to yesterday, I think there should have been a better way of pushing that message across. But I just pray, and I hope, because INEC came out after the meeting yesterday and said election will hold. But I remember that 2-3 days before the February 14th, when they held the National Council of State meeting, somebody reminded him that the same way you came out of the meeting and told us that elections will hold, and by Saturday you had postponed the election. I think we have no excuse. It has got too bad that United Nations will now be telling Nigerians, make sure that March 28 is sacrosanct. You can imagine that if the international community don't trust us, I think there's a need for us to work on integrity. That is just the most important thing.
We have observers from European Union, from African Union. They are already in town already. And if this situation persists, do you think it was the best way to have communicated that? That's how the Chief of Army Staff said that thing.
It's a more fundamental issue than just communication. I think the lack of trust of people don't trust the military. We don't trust INEC anymore. We had so much belief in Jega that February 14, 2015 was going to take place because he kept assuring us over and over again that he was prepared. However, the past 4 weeks has let us realize that he wasn't as prepared as he said he was. If it took him 3 weeks after the election to start testing out the card readers, if we had about 70-something% of collection rate before the election was postponed, and now we're now seeing that it could actually be improved upon. So they were not as efficient as he proclaimed that they were. You know, so we doubt him, we doubt the military. The military, they say things and they don't fulfill it. The Nigerian people constantly doubt their leaders, and that is why they will not go back to the area, even though the government has said it's been liberated. We've seen cases where an area was liberated, the military said they've taken over, and then the Boko Haram people came back, and the military took off, left the lives of the citizens in jeopardy just as before. So there's so much distrust. And we've not seen, like it's been established by my other two gentlemen, that the communication skill with which the speech was given yesterday is even increasing the doubts in our mind that the election will hold. We might have been expecting that things might go smoothly, but the statement that were made yesterday further scares us and makes us believe that this might just not work out.
Julie, finally on this, do we have enough soldiers on ground to make sure that even if these people are asked to go back to their communities, there's not going to be a counterattack from the insurgents to hold these territories down?
There are certain things that have happened, you know, in the course of this military campaign that will tell you that we are in a position of strength. The border towns, you see, that was the value of getting our neighbors involved in this fight. You know, the border towns where they used to
coming from
and take refuge. But Chad had been accused so many times of allowing Boko Haram into his territory, giving them safe haven and all that. You know, right now, it's difficult for them to get into those countries anymore. Now, Cameroon has also secured its border, so they are finding it difficult. And all their training camps, even as far as Bauchi State. If you've been monitoring the papers, their camps as far as Bauchi State have been destroyed. So the training camps, the logistics facilities that they had have been destroyed, including even their food.
So I'll quickly take this break. When we come back, we'll talk more. Please don't go away. Stay with us.
The damage that has been done to this country is great.
Do you want to go backward? No!
The time ticks. The nation now waits. It's next general elections. Do you have your PVC? Ensure you do to exercise your franchise during the elections. It's your right. It's your duty.
Remember that the change that is upon us can only be done with our voters' card.